lift up this very important issue that we're here to talk about today, which is the, first of all, just pride and what pride means to us as LGBTQ plus people and allies, but certainly the wave of hate that we have seen in 2023 is certainly unprecedented in my lifetime. First, I'd like to acknowledge Gerber Hart. This library, this place is so special to me. I have been coming here since way before I was a state senator because they have probably one of the most comprehensive LGBTQ book collections in the United States. And so I encourage you, after the cameras leave and this event is over, to come back to Gerber Hart and just spend a quiet Saturday afternoon here absorbing the wonderful books and videos that they have to offer that tell the whole story of LGBTQ history at a time where our history is attempting to be erased. I also just want to say that a space like this is so important right now, where we see coordinated efforts all across the country to erase LGBTQ history and laws being passed that would make institutions like this something that people could not imagine. So we're here today to push back on those efforts. Let me introduce myself. I am State Senator Mike Simmons. I use pronouns he, his, and I represent the 7th District, which includes the Chicago neighborhoods of Rogers Park, Edgewater, Uptown, Lincoln Square, West Ridge, North Center, and Lakeview. I am the first openly gay person elected to the Illinois Senate. I'm the first black person to represent my district where I grew up, and I am the third openly gay black state senator in the United States. And so representation is power. I'm honored to be the first for all these things, but that comes with a lot of responsibility, particularly in the climate that we're living in. Why are we doing this event? I started this event and the first year that I was sworn in 2021 because I wanted LGBTQ plus folks and our allies to have a non-performative space, a non-cosmetic space to come together and to simply reflect on what pride means to us. And this event in 2021 and 2022 was one of the most beautiful events that I was able to witness and experience in the time that I've been in office. And this year, 2023, the climate has changed nationally, so we are a bit more of a somber tone, I think, today, but I think that we will take many things from this convening, just as we did in the previous 2 years. I want to start off, before we kick off our program, with offering a couple of reflections. First, I ask you all to think about how many youth would we have in our country still alive? How many youth would we have that would have good mental health? How many youth would be able to dream of their future if we did not have a scenario where they are the targets of hateful politicians, dare I say untalented politicians, and vapid politicians, and misguided faith leaders, and complacent people and cowardly corporations that enable this hatred? How many LGBTQ youth would be able to thrive and dream about their future if pop culture didn't continue to misappropriate LGBTQ history and culture? How many of our direct ancestors were LGBTQ, but were not safe to be out and proud? How many of our LGBTQ ancestors would never imagine our lives today as direct descendants, whether we be straight or LGBTQ, because all of us have queer ancestors? How many communities would thrive if big corporations like Target and Anheuser-Busch didn't cave to hate and bigotry? Let me offer a little bit of framing before we begin. In 2023, we have already seen more than 500 pieces of legislation introduced in state legislatures around the country targeting LGBTQ people. And to give you some examples, some of those bills would, for example, bar trans youth from participating in athletic activities. Legislation introduced that would ban books where the protagonist was an LGBTQ person. States that are passing legislation that would outlaw abortion on the 1-year anniversary of Dobbs. States that are passing legislation that would outlaw gender-affirming care. Health care for trans people. Health care is a human right. States that are passing legislation that would ban books in our libraries and in our classrooms. States that are passing legislation that would ban the simple discussion of gender identity, and sexual orientation in K through 12 classrooms. In personal terms, if laws like that were passed here, it means that the next generation of 7th District residents would not be able to know that they had an openly gay black state senator that existed a generation before them, or several LGBTQ local elected officials. I'm not interested in that. So I've asked us all to come together today because 100 of those 500 bills have been signed into law. So of the 500 bills, 20% of them are new laws put into effect in places like Florida, Missouri, Michigan, and Indiana, which is the state where my partner was raised. Right down the street from his boyhood home, a parent can simply object to a book being in the library and has a good shot at that actually carrying through. So we have a lot to talk about today with this unprecedented wave of hatred. I personally have no interest in accommodating hate for a second. I have no interest in the respectability politics that would ask me to put my head down and bow down to queer folks and trans folks and LGBTQ folks that troll me every day on social media. In the 2 years that I've been a state senator, I've championed LGBTQ legislation and passed LGBTQ legislation with many of the electeds that I co-serve with. And I've become a target. There's not a day that goes by where somebody doesn't go on my social media and tell everybody in my district to keep their children away from me because I'm a pervert, because I'm a groomer. I don't care about how I feel. It's my family and my community that I'm always concerned about. It's other 7th District residents that see that garbage on my social media channels and feel fearful, just as I have. It's when my colleagues stand up on the floor of the Illinois Senate when we're debating legislation to authorize gender-neutral bathrooms, where a Republican senator threatened to beat people up who would use the gender-neutral restrooms, who are trans. And it's me standing up and telling the presiding officer to strike that garbage from the record because I wouldn't want a single trans person in this state to feel unsafe doing something as simple as using the restroom. What are the times that we are living in if this is the reality? My dad was a refugee from Ethiopia. This is the kind of crap that we were fleeing a generation ago. And it's bubbling up right here, live in our society. So I just wanted to start us off with those sobering notes. There's still so much to celebrate, and I know we've got a lot of speakers today that will talk about the things that we should celebrate because, you know, LGBTQ people, queer folks, as an intersectional person, as a black person, as a descendant of enslaved Americans, as a descendant of Ethiopians that were never colonized, I refuse to pathologize our history of the times that we're living in. There's still a lot to celebrate. There is power in queer joy, and some of the folks that we've asked to come here today I know are leading that queer joy. And so I am so happy to, at this point, give it back over to my awesome Director of Outreach and Constituent Services, Shanika Hohenkirk, who will kick off our program and will bring up our first speaker. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Senator Simmons, for your thoughts and reflections. We're so happy to have all of you here today. First up, we're going to have James Conley, the co-chair of Gerber Hart and Library and Archives.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Senator Simmons, for this beautiful event, for bringing attention to our organization, and thank you all of you beautiful faces here who are in community to celebrate the joy in the LGBTQIA+ community. My name is James Conley. I am the co-chair of the Gerber Hart Library and Archives here in Chicago, and I'm so pleased to be part of this organization. I started as a volunteer for 7 years, doing the work in the archives, getting to explore the rich history that we have ensconced in this building, and I realized it was time to step up and to see how I could bring my energy to bring our organization forward. You know, the Gerber Hart's been around for about 40 years, a little over 40 years, almost entirely volunteer run. We have been in leaky basements, we've been in hot attics, we've been in storefronts that did not take the rain very well, and we are now here in this beautiful building. We are always looking to expand. We are always looking to expand our collections because thus far our collections have come to us by the generosity of folks who felt like giving their histories, their collected histories to us. It's been a very powerful thing for us, but we know as an archive and as our social responsibility, our archives are not complete. They are not telling the whole story. There are communities of color that we have never been able to engage with before. We are missing those stories. We're missing the trans stories in our community. We are missing the non-binary stories in our community. We're missing stories of strong women in our community. We are looking to fulfill, as we move forward, our goal of being as inclusive and telling that whole story as possible. One of the things I love about this organization is it's a place, it's a repository, yes, but it's a place where we hold history deeply important. And when threats to our history, when threats to our livelihoods come at us again, like all the bills that are in motion right now, they're trying to silence us, they're trying to hide us, they're trying to put us back in the closet. If we can learn anything from this history, is that we're not going to stay there, and we're not going to put up with that. We're not going to go back to where we were. It was a terrible time, and we have done so much work. We've lost so many lives to get to where we are today. And one of the things that an archive can do is it can not only hold that history of those fights, those struggles, but also of the beautiful private moments in our community. We've received collections of deeply intimate photographs of people having just parties in their home, going to the beach together, having a barbecue together. And it's a reminder, especially to our young people who see all this stuff and are afraid and don't know where to turn. I know I was one of those people myself, that we have always been here. And we have always been in community with each other. We have always brought that joy together. So it's one of the things that we can offer here as an organization. And I'm so proud that we're hosting this event here today because we want to keep building that history and we want to introduce more people to it. There's this stupid line about, oh, we're recruiting. We're not recruiting. We've always been here. We just didn't have the words for it. Nobody was allowed to recognize their own power. And this is a place where we can remind people that we have always been here, we have always been strong, and we will continue to do that. So I want to thank you all so much for being here, for including us in this. And I hope, as Senator Simmons says, I hope you will take the time to explore our collections. We will be happy to show you around, show you some of the most beautiful stuff we have in our collections today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James. Next up, we're going to have Cheyenne Lynn Parker, the CEO of Brave Space Alliance.
Well, good morning, everybody. Well, it's almost afternoon, isn't it? Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Shannon Lynn Parker. She, her pronouns. I am the CEO of Brave Space Alliance. I'm on day 53. So I really want to take the time to ground us in the reality that access to pride really is a privilege. If you look across the landscape of our world, our country, our state, county, and even city, the ability to be out and proud is actually, man, we are in the minority. We live in this pleasant little echo chamber where we believe that we are in fact the norm, but the reality is that this isn't. Unless we are very vigilant about guarding our rights, unless we are hyperactive about ensuring that individuals have not only the access to be out and proud, but the access to have their basic needs met, their access to thrive, their access to grow, their access to live self-actualized lives, then in fact we're going to continue to see these things fleeced right before our eyes, day in and day out. I actually want to ground us in the reality that yes, pride is a celebration, but pride is the reminder that we can so quickly, as we're seeing day in and day out, go backwards. The reality is that we're seeing right before our eyes our young people being harmed. We're seeing our medical protections being taken away from us, and so many other things. So again, I just really want to ground us in that. I want that to resonate with you all. Brave Space Alliance, as many of you all know, is an LGBTQ, Black-led, trans-led organization on the city's south side. We serve thousands of individuals through our pantry services, through our Dignity Suite, which provides gender-affirming services, clothing articles. Our pillars are health, housing, food, and dignity. One of the things that we like to say is dignity first, dignity above all things. I want you all to leave here remembering the fact that there are individuals who are invested in us not having dignified lives. There are individuals out here who are invested in us going back into closets of which we will not return. I am not afraid of the dark, but I am a bit claustrophobic, so I have no intention of returning back to the closet. Maybe a walk-in one. Again, I want to thank you all so much, Senator Simmons. I want to thank you for having me. Fellow colleagues here, thank you so much. Gerber Hart, thank you. And with that being said, I'm going to pass on to the next person. Thank you all.
So much. Next up, we're going to have Maria Haddon from 49
Good afternoon, everybody. I don't really feel like talking much today, so you're going to get a really short speech. It also helps to follow such great speakers. I do want to reflect, and I remember when you did the first one of these, Senator Simmons, and I'm so glad you made it an annual tradition. One, I hate to confess that it's actually in the last 3 years, this is the only time each year that I've been to the Gerber Hart Library. So I'm making a promise publicly. I intend to come back before the next press conference, before next year. As a matter of fact, my wife, Natalia, told me to take some pictures, and she wants to feature the library. And it's in walking distance for us, Commissioner Morita. So we can make it here pretty easily. But I really, other than the joy of being here with all of you and the opportunity, and to Shannon's point, the privilege of being able to out and proud celebrate Pride, I also just want to reflect on some of the notes of the fact that, you know, you didn't choose this place by accident, but increasingly to some of our speakers' comments, being in a library has a lot of significance in this time in our history. I don't know what it is about human nature or our societies that bring us to a space where some elements of our society just want us to fail. And I don't mean us as like LGBTQI people, I mean society, right? Like it's like a self-destructive thing that we're seeing. We have so many things that we have to work on. And I think about how at an individual level, sometimes we have those self-destructive tendencies too, right? Sometimes when we're faced with personal challenges, like needing to schedule that doctor's appointment, needing to work off that debt, sometimes instead we procrastinate or we don't deal with our overwhelming feelings, and maybe we pick up negative habits or do bad things. And I think about the personal tendencies, and I kind of try and view our society as going through that. There are a lot of people who are motivated by hate, but there are a lot of people who are being led astray. There are a lot of folks that aren't motivated by hate, but they don't know what else to do. And I'm proud to be able to serve the 49th Ward in the city of Chicago, to have so many fantastic new colleagues in city council, returning colleagues, but also more partners in our broad community. Because while we are a little bit of the exception in Chicago and in Illinois, I think some of the responsibility that I feel, especially every year that we see more of these bills, more of this backwards kind of movement towards ignorance and hate, is to continue to shine. We have to continue to set the example here in the city of Chicago, in the county of Cook, and in the state of Illinois, to one, be a safe and welcoming space for everyone, but especially for folks who are being ostracized and oppressed in just like within 50 to 60 miles across different borders that are so close to us. But not just a safe space, but we have to keep pushing the boundaries of what it looks like to demonstrate a thriving society. We have our own challenges that we deal with, but we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So I am happy to be in the struggle with all of you. I'm happy to celebrate Pride for another year here with so many wonderful people in Gerber Hart. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Next up, we're going to have Stephanie Skora from Brave Heart Alliance. I'm sorry, Brave Space Alliance. The heart got me going.
name is Stephanie Scora. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am the co-founder and chief development officer of Brave Space Alliance. I'm in my new role for 53 days. Also, I'm on day 2300 or something. I am part of a family that has lived continuously in this neighborhood in Rogers Park for over 150 years. I'm also the first LGBTQ person in my family, the first LGBTQ person to be rejected by parts of my family, and a part of a community that has one of the only areas in the city that has only LGBTQ local elected officials. Josina, you're honorary. I've got a gay man for a state senator, a lesbian for an alderperson and a state representative, a bisexual for my Cook County Board of Review commissioner. Rogers Park is doing great. But there are places, as all the speakers before me have mentioned, that are not doing so well. Over 500 pieces of legislation we've heard already today have been introduced. Over 100 have been signed across the country, many in our neighboring states. And I have loved ones in those states. They do not have the same human rights that we enjoy here in Illinois. And when I go to see them, I lose my human rights when I cross the border. Illinois has become a beacon. Chicago and Cook County have become especially a beacon. Neighborhoods like Rogers Park, which have strong LGBTQ histories, have become a beacon. For people across this country, places where they know they can come and live, maybe not be safe, but live dignified, full lives. Have their truths respected, honored. Be in community with people like that. Brave Space Alliance, we used to repeat this line over and over for the last 18 months. The state of Illinois, unfortunately, has not put its money where its mouth is. The state of Illinois has pretty much every protection we could ask for in terms of LGBTQ human rights. But before today, there was no material investment from the state government. We found out today there's going to be $3 million invested in trans programs from the Illinois Department of Human Services. We're really excited about that. We hope that money goes to the organizations that need it the most. Not just organizations like Brave Space Alliance in Chicago, although we do want some, but organizations across the state. Peoria Proud, the Up Center in Champaign County, Rainbow Cafe in Carbondale, and every organization in between. We have a flood of individuals coming to our state, refugees in their own country, who have been expelled from their homes by bigoted and hateful legislation passed by people who don't just want to see us forced back into the closet, but want to see us forced out of public life in general, want to see us forced out of life, period. They're coming to Illinois. They're coming to Cook County. They're coming to Chicago. They're coming to Rogers Park. And I am so grateful to be part of this wonderful collection of individuals, because I know that together we are creating the social, the political, the economic, and the community safety net to catch those folks, to say we are so sorry for what has happened to you, and it's not going to happen to you here. What do you need? What can we get for you? How can we meet those needs? And how can we make sure that you get to live in safety, in community, in love, and in dignity? That's one of the things that I'm so proud about at Brave Space Alliance. We put dignity for LGBTQ people, especially Black people, especially trans people, first. We are a dignity-first organization. That's why we provide primarily wraparound services. We want to make sure when somebody is going to their housing appointment, when they're going to their doctor's appointment, when they're going to their checkup to maybe get on PrEP or PEP, they come to Brave Space Alliance first so they can walk into those other appointments feeling good and walk out feeling better. Our organizations, our elected officials, our community form that net that makes sure that we can not just survive, but thrive. I'm so grateful to be here celebrating another Pride with all of you Senator Simmons, and with everybody in this room. I hope to see y'all back here next year with a few more additional faces.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next up, we're going to have Paul Bruno with Rattle Back, please.
much and am humbled and honored to be in the room with all of you amazing people. When I was invited last year, I was like, you know, why am I being invited? What am I going to say? You know, and I was talking to my husband, Mike Weaver, this week, and I wanted to share a story with you all. You know, born and raised in Chicago, I went to Taft High School. I graduated from Taft in 1986. So yeah, Mike and I were visiting my mom for Mother's Day. She lives in Bloomingdale, which is just part of the Chicago metropolitan area, right? And we stopped at Jewel beforehand to pick her up some flowers and to bring some stuff over to her before we got to her place. And we got out of the car, and Mike went to grab my hand. And I instinctually, for the first time in such a long time, pulled my hand away from him. Because although we were in the Chicago metropolitan area, it didn't feel safe. And all of a sudden, I was that scrawny high school kid walking down the halls of Taft, hoping that I wouldn't run into Tony Taterka and his band of thugs who would call me fag and trip me and push me down and kick me. I've been really reflecting on this as a white cisgender gay man. There are a lot of privileges that come along with that so many of my brothers, sisters, and siblings in this community don't have. And if I was feeling that way, imagine how my black trans sisters are feeling. Just getting on the bus and going from one neighborhood to the next in this city. We have to do better. It has been a long time in my life since I've felt this much dear for our community, and we're not going back. And I am gonna hold my husband's hand in public because he's the love of my life. And I have hope. Before owning Rattletack Records, I was an educator for many years. I was a teacher for many years. I was a principal in elementary school and at a junior high school. And the hope I have is that I've had parents contact me whose children, I was the principal at their school when they were in first grade, second grade, third grade, whose children are now coming out to their parents and whose parents are thanking me for being an out and proud principal and role model for their kids. And so I have hope that we are going to win this battle. And I think the people that are waging this war against us are counting on us to just finally be so tired that we can't go on anymore. And so we have to be indefatigable in this. We have to keep going, and we have to keep fighting, and we have to support each other, and we have to love each other. And I used to say to my students every morning on the morning announcements, just remember to be kind to each other and to love one another, because the world is never going to be a worse place with more kindness and more love in it. But I also want to remind people that they should not confuse kindness with weakness. And if you come to my community, you are going to be met with my wrath. I love you all.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to have the 48th Alderperson, Mary Mina Hoppenwood.
Thank you, everyone. The 48th Ward is just a few steps away. I'm Lenny Minot Hoppenworth, Alderwoman of the 48th Ward, which is an incredible, amazing neighborhood, which includes Andersonville, Edgewater, and Uptown. And I I'm a small business owner, I'm a mother, I'm a product of Chicago Public Schools, and I'm so proud to be with you here today. Andersonville has been my home for over 24 years, and many have said that Andersonville is the second coolest place to live. But we did decide that, you know, in our community, it should not only be cool, it should be welcoming to all. And when I was campaigning, and thank God I'm on the other side of campaigning, a part of the LGBTQ caucus, we are the gayest city council in the universe. I've heard too many young people come up to me and say that they moved here from California, from Texas, that they feel safer here. And people should not have to move to feel safe. You know, on Magnolia in Lakewood, Balmoral, we have Lakewood, the Pride trees. And if you've not checked it out, please do. It's very cool. They have, you know, just one person decided to do this years ago. And the neighbor said, I want to do that too. That's very cool that you're decorating your trees with pride flags. And so it happens that you can see blocks of people coming together showing their pride. But somebody showed me a picture at Midsummer Fest, which is a fantastic event. It was a photo of one of the trees, and somebody had burned the flag. What did the flag do to you? Like you felt you need to expel it. It should not be a crime to exist. And while we're here to celebrate with so many of you, we know that too many of us are not here today because of who they were, because they wanted to be out and proud. And so we have to keep going. And that's why we're very grateful that you've made this an annual event to talk about who we are, because we are everywhere. We are small business owners, we are students, we are aging, and we deserve dignity. I began my real political phase in my life in 2016 after the federal elections, and started with the Women's March, knowing that our reproductive rights were under attack. But who knew that today we would have less reproductive rights than before? And it's not just that, it's our bodies, it's bodily autonomy, and this is not right. And this is why we have to keep going. Civic engagement is everything, and that's why I'm really proud to live in this neighborhood, surrounded by so many fantastic elected officials. And I want to do so much more. I want to share with you some Victory Fund stats, because these are fantastic. They tell you it is. This is the 2023 report. 1,185 out LGBTQ plus officials currently serve in elected office in the U.S., which is a 13.6 increase since last May. Last year, there was a 23.3% increase in LGBTQ plus elected officials of color. And the number of transgender and non-binary elected officials grew by 8.1%. Let me see a transgender elected official in City Council, but I can't wait for that day, because it's really going to help complete us. I'm the Alderwoman of the 48th Ward, Lenny Manaha-Hoppenworth, the first queer person of color to represent the 48th Ward, and the first Filipina to sit in City Council, and I'm so proud to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. Next up, we're going to have Anthony Galloway. He's the president of Lord Rustin and Bates. Anthony, come on.
Senators Simmons. How are you today? My name is Anthony Galloway of Lord Rustin and Bates. Lord Rustin and Bates is a capacity building technical assistance serving entity that provides that service to small and large organizations around building capacity, around providing access to healthcare for vulnerable populations. Now, I just said a mouthful there. Tell you a little bit about my story. In 2020, at the height of COVID, I started coughing. And I said, oh my God, I should stay home. They tell us to stay home because of COVID. And I thought I had COVID and it would go away. And then I had this experience where I was in bed, and I'm laying in bed, and my face could move, my eyes could move, but my body was locked, and I could not get out of bed. And it was an experience that I had not ever experienced before. And when I was able to move, I went straight to the hospital, to Northwestern Hospital, and I was able to be checked in, and after hours of checking in on me, they finally said, oh, we see this cloud over your heart. At 39 years old, I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. And it was one of those situations where I had worked for 20-something years, and I had access to health care. And, you know, through my through employee-based health insurance. But around this time, I wasn't working anymore, and it was in the height of COVID, and I thought to myself, how am I going to pay for this? Because I'm still living in the paradigm pre-Affordable Care Act days. And what I realized was that a president had been sworn in and fixed all the fixes, and I had a social worker come in, and I have not spent one penny on my health care, yet, because now we have an infrastructure that actually saves lives like myself. If it wasn't for the Affordable Care, oops, I'm sorry. My equilibrium is off these days. But one of the things that I am very most appreciative of is that we have affordable health care now, and that being civically engaged is an important factor in ensuring that we have access to health care for vulnerable populations like myself. I'm a proud Black gay man, but I have it a little bit better than some of my friends. And so it is important during this Pride Month, I want to make sure that we keep that mindset of being civically engaged, like the Alderwoman said before me. I'm sorry, Alderwoman? Yes, Alderwoman said before me. Thank you all so much, and I hope that inspires you to talk to your folks about being civically engaged.
Next up, we're going to have 47 Alderperson Matt Martin come on up and give his remarks. He's in the back.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matt Martin from the 47th Ward. It's just so great to be with you all here this afternoon. Thank you again, Mike, for the invite, for being here and being able to share just a few comments. It's over the last number of months, I've been looking forward to this because it's always an opportunity for me to reflect and think about what we've been able to do, especially on City Council. So being able to work with Maria, with Rosanna and Carlos on passing a welcoming cities ordinance that really helps preserve bodily autonomy for people, not just in Chicago, not just Illinois, but as we've discussed throughout today, people from all across our country. And to think about the beautiful collection of communities that I represent, and the fact that throughout my brief time in office, I felt nothing but love and support from them as it concerns just how accepting I feel Lincoln Square, Ravenswood, and North Center, Andersonville, Uptown, West Lakeview have been when it comes to just recognizing and affirming the diversity in all the beautiful forms that we see here in Chicago. But also, an unfortunate part of our job is to get residents reaching out to us, businesses reaching out to us, commissions sending us letters to shine a spotlight on the hate that continues to be evident in my wonderful community and throughout our city. And to think about, with events like these, months like Pride, to be reminded of how far we've come, but that this isn't a straight line, that we go forward and backward and to the side, and to know that in so many other parts of our state and our country and our world, it's so much harder. And so I am grateful for Mike inviting me to participate, because it allows me to think more critically about what it means to be an ally. And say, okay, well, I'm not just going to events, I'm not just making some speeches during Pride Month, but thinking about those other 11 months. What can I be doing more proactively, not reactively, right? Not just being present, but reaching out to individuals and organizations. Many of you are here today to think about what I can do better as an ally. And so I'm grateful to you, Senator, the fact that you are my state senator, my friend, my colleague. And creating this space where I can think more critically about what I and my colleagues have been able to do, but also what we can do better. And so I remain as committed as ever to continue working with everybody in this room and beyond. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mike, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Alderman. Next up, we're going to have KJ Whitehead, who is a comedian, writer, and activist.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Senator Simmons, of course, for having me again. Of all the times that I stand in front of a microphone, I look forward to this one of the most times, because it is one of the only times I can stand in front of a microphone and no one's expecting me to be funny. I've said that before. Am I supposed to tell jokes? I don't know. No one's told me. My heart's beating, but we're all good. I'm happy to be here today again. Once again, I'm Kuji Jagalia Juniper Whitehead, KJ Whitehead for short. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a comedian, writer, and I've angrily stood at corners and held up signs. So you already know. I do want to say I apologize for starting out a little grim. No apologies. We are in a scary place, though, right now. Those who oppose our existence no longer hide their intentions, and their support is overwhelming, to say the least. This is a time now more than ever that visibility is important. We could have said this last year and the year before that, but that only shows just how bad this problem continues to get. The ongoing threat to LGBTQIA existence under the false mission of protecting children. Worse, companies have come forward to try to market to us, and they draw protests and boycotts. And you know, things have gotten a bit weird. We have to defend a corporation to participate in Pride. Bills coming forward and disrupting us, telling us how to live, all coming from a party that claims to be for freedom. And I say different. I say we believe in freedom. I say we believe in freedom, freedom to be who you are without someone telling you that you're lying to yourself or trying to reach out to you with one hand and using the other to take away your rights. I'm sorry to say that either these people don't realize their hypocrisy or they just don't care. Either way, we have no time for this. You have no time for this. And thankfully, the people of Arkansas have decided they no longer have time for this. And they spoke up, they fought a bill, an anti-trans bill, and they won. I want to say it's safe to say that we won't be expecting anti-LGBTQIA bills to come forward in Chicago or Illinois anytime soon.
Hell no.
but if you should leave Chicago and notice that injustice taking place elsewhere, you step up and you do something about it. It's okay to be angry. Let people know that you're angry. And having to come out again and again and again on stage, over and over, just in front of people, trying to make them laugh, I know a thing or two about speaking my own truth and speaking out. So speak out, and eventually someone will hear you. And for those who won't hear you, unless they are of importance and you need them, wish them well and move on. Because we don't have time for that anymore. Sides need to be taken. I want to close with this. Elie Wiesel said, "We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. So don't go silent now. We need you." Thank you for having me once again. I hope it's back.
So much, KJ, for sharing your thoughts. Next up, we're going to have Timothy Jackson, the AIDS Foundation, Chicago.
Good afternoon, everyone. As I mentioned, my name is Timothy Jackson, Director of Government Relations for AIDS Foundation Chicago. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I do want to say thank you to Senator Simmons and his staff for the invitation to be here with you all today in celebration of Pride. And as I was kind of thinking about what my remarks would be today, I thought, hey, I could mention the $2.5 million that Senator Simmons helped to get in the state budget for Pride in this slide. I could mention the legislation for gender-inclusive multi-occupancy restrooms that we were able to get passed this year. For the pharmacist-initiated PrEP and PEP bill we got passed last year due to Senator Simmons and Representative Cassidy's help, but I'm not going to talk about that today. Instead, it's just something that has been on my heart this Pride month. Just some words, and so I just kind of, y'all just stay with me. Just kind of offer these remarks entitled Pride is. Pride is community. Pride is protest. Pride is hope. Pride is the freedom to love who you want. Pride is affirming. Pride is the freedom to be who you are and comfortable in your own skin. But pride doesn't just stop there. Because pride is acknowledging that some members of the LGBTQ plus community don't feel safe or welcomed in community. Pride is providing a safe space for those coming to terms with their sexual orientation or gender identity. Pride is dismantling the racism and anti-blackness sentiment woven into the fabric of this community. Pride is ending the HIV epidemic while also beating back Mpox and other STIs impacting our communities. Pride is working together to eliminate stigma, discrimination, and criminalization. Pride is protecting LGBTQ plus older adults and older adults living with HIV. Pride is protecting trans kids and access to gender-affirming care. Pride is declaring that trans lives matter, Black lives matter. Pride is not woke, because pride is humanity. Pride is self-agency and self-empowerment. Pride is courage and joy. Pride is the past, present, and future. And as a Black gay man living and thriving with HIV, pride is love. Thank you.
Next up, we're going to have the alderperson for the 46th Ward, Ms. Angela Clay.
Happy Pride, all.
Happy Pride.
Are you all ready to have a good time this weekend? Because we deserve it, okay? My name is Angela Clay. I am the alderwoman of the 46th Ward, and I could not be more honored and proud to stand with all of my siblings in this room right now You all have no idea the impact that you are making for generations to come. And when I was too thinking about my remarks, it was really how successful we can be once we work together in this room. We have all of the pieces of the puzzle to make our society inclusive of all of us. I grew up in Uptown, and I am so happy that we have the start of Lakeview and Boys Town in my ward, because I've told people in the past that they really are the pillars of our ward. You all provide safe spaces, not just for you, but for all of us. And that's something that I don't think a lot of our neighbors understand, is when you fight for you, you open a world of doors for all of us. That courage that you all have inside of you benefits each and every last one of us. And I want you to be proud of that. I want you to understand that you are making a way for young people who have no idea who you are right now. But they want to be themselves, and they want to be treated equally. And so with the work that we're doing right now, we are making so much progress to make sure that we are protected. I also want to make sure that we are giving each other a space to feel all of the hard work that you put in. You know, we get caught up in just doing the good fight, and it is tiring. Hello? Okay? So we have to sit in this space of, we've done this. We have a ways to go, but we are here now. And on Sunday, when we are excited and celebrating and having a great time, I want you to feel that energy. I want you to feel that love. I want you to feel a community that is behind you, not just on Sunday, but each and every day of your life. And I have the honorable pleasure of having the Pride Parade start in my ward. So I hope you come out. I hope you enjoy the festivities. I am so happy to have a state senator that represents the 46th ward like Mike Simmons. He is amazing, because not only does he come from a place of truth, but he comes from a place of good intentions, right? And so when you combine those two, you have a direct path moving forward to victory. So I just wanted to say thank you. Now let's enjoy the rest of our evening.
WGN, do you need to do anything? Feeling okay right now. All right. Moving right along. Thank you, Alderwoman. Next up, we're going to have Silas Leslie, trainer and coordinator for Chicago Therapy Collective.
Hey everyone, my name is Silas Leslie. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the program coordinator for Hire Trans Now, which is part of the Chicago Therapy Collective. Chicago Therapy Collective is an Andersonville-based trans-led nonprofit that focuses on the mental health and wellness for the trans and non-binary community through health care, as the name would imply, community building, arts, and employment and economic equity. This is my third year speaking. I just want to thank Gerber Hart for not only hosting this, but for the amazing and invaluable work you do. Senator Simmons, thank you so much once again. It's a joy to be here, and it's really amazing to have you as my state senator. So I'm one of the many lucky ones in the room that have Senator Simmons. So this is my third year. I always fret about this. This is like my big public speaking thing of the year. Never a fan. And I spend a week like writing and rewriting a speech. And I did the same thing this week. I rewrote it while sitting here earlier. And I was trying to figure out why I struggled so much writing this year. And I think it is the dissonance I think a lot of us are feeling, especially those of us in this work, in this neighborhood, who have the privilege to be ourselves, to have the privilege to be in community, to be in public. I was thinking of Midsummer Fest. Earlier this month, we had a stage donated to us by the Andersonville Chamber of Commerce and sponsored by a lot of the officials in this room, as well as a lot of the business owners. And it was at the end of the night, and we had an amazing DJ, and my entire staff were just dancing. Like, we never have a time to stop. We are always working these events. We're never taking part of it. And there was this moment, and I just sit there and like almost started crying, which is not my usual thing. Just at the joy. We had a moment to experience. And that is so fleeting and rare. And it's so not often that we can embrace that. And I think, thinking of that moment, thinking of spending the day, you know, with drag story time, with an amazing drag show, standing there holding the hand of my partner who is also trans, in my neighborhood, surrounded by my neighbors. And then I thought of how rare that is, and the beauty in that rareness and the sadness in that rareness. To embrace the present is to embrace that joy, to embrace community, embrace love, embrace friendship, but it's also a time to acknowledge the fear, the pain, the legislation, the political culture, the hate crimes, the violent words. And it's a time to fight. It's a time to retain our past and ensure our future. And yeah, pride. It's always a sticky wicket, isn't it? But I am so proud to represent this organization where being an out trans person is essential to my job, to be honest. And I am so fortunate to stand here with amazing community leaders, amazing political leaders, amazing business leaders, to stand in a moment of community and reflection. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for having me. And yeah, happy Pride.
Thank you, Silas. Next up, we're going to have Cook County Commissioner of 13th District, Josina Maria.
Good afternoon, everybody. Josina Morita, the County Commissioner of the 13th District. Proud to be able to work with my son. I just want to say thank you for this. This is my first time. And you know, sometimes you don't totally know what you're walking into. Especially as an elected official, you're like, okay, another press conference. But I really appreciate how reflective and open this space has been, just for me to be able to sit here and listen and kind of be in community. Like I said, kind of a non-performative space. So I'll start with the assignment that I was given, which is what does pride mean? It really is a poetic, kind of term, and a very powerful term to me. It is, reflective of the history and the struggle and where we are in this long trajectory. It's also a very personal term, right? It's a personal process. It's something that somebody can't take away from you. It is, it has that historical perspective, but also such a sentiment of hope. And while it is very personal, it's also a collective term, right? It's about building community in a way that we all need. And so it really, when I thought about it, I was like, it really is a beautiful, kind of term. I want to say, as much as people talked about the progress that we've made in a lot of our communities, even just here in the 13th District, and Kevin knows we overlap, there are parts of our district where on election day just this year, I had librarians being called pedophiles for having books like these in the library. People still saying things like, LGBT folks shouldn't be around children. And this is still here in Cook County. This is still here in my district, in the 13th District. And so it is an ongoing process. It is an ongoing fight. And while we can legislate so many things as elected officials, we can't legislate out hate. We wish we could, but we can't. And so I want to thank everybody in the room who does the work every day to build this community. As partners, elected officials, we do our part, but really it is the work that you all are doing to work in the community and build this community that we all need, because we do. We have to change hearts and minds. We have to have the hard conversations. We have to look at sometimes our own family members, our own community members, fellow elected officials in the room, and have those hard conversations. And so just appreciative to be here today as part of this, and look forward to working with everybody here to continue to do this work, even here in our own communities.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up, we're going to have Gregory Gross from Care for Real.
Hi, I'm Gerber. I have the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of Care for Real. For those of you who aren't familiar with Care for Real, Care for Real's mission is to foster a healthy and equitable community by helping our neighbors overcome food insecurity with dignity. And I will ask your forgiveness as I've had to write out some words, as I've been dealing with long COVID for over a year, and I never know when the brain fog is going to hit me. So please excuse this. I didn't grow up in Chicago. I grew up in Coldwater, Ohio, a town of about 4,000 people in the cornfields of west central part of the state. And there, everyone looked like my family, although I'm told that when my parents were elementary students in the same town, the public schools were still segregated. And segregated in my small town meant that the Catholic and the Protestant students were in separate classes in the public school, because that was the diversity in our town. Anyone or anything different was suspect. As a child, I always knew I was different than the other kids. I didn't have the words for it, I just knew it. But the other kids had words for it. Words that I've now claimed for myself. Gay, queer. But the other words I still recoil at when I hear. At the time, those words brought confusion and fear and shame. It wasn't until I went off to college that I met an openly queer person. It wasn't until I moved to Chicago for grad school that I was able to begin to undo the shame and the fear of being different and come out to myself, let alone to anyone else as someone queer. So what does pride mean to me? It means shedding the fear and the shame of being different, of standing out. It means claiming who I am, all of me, who I was created to be. Just last week, a queer elder who I greatly respect said to me, we don't need pride anymore. It's 2023. We are fully integrated and accepted. Yeah, just like you all, those words took me aback. That's just not the case, I said. Drag artists are being attacked across the country. Our trans siblings are being attacked and murdered merely because they exist. Oh, well, I wasn't including them. And that's the problem, isn't it? Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice anywhere, everywhere, said Dr. King. Need I need to say that this person was white as well? At Care for Real, Edgewater's anchor food pantry for over 50 years, I've been humbled when speaking with folks who have traveled for hours on CTA to get to us. Folks who are trans women of color in particular. When we explain that we serve folks in our immediate area, they have said they don't feel safe going to their own neighborhood food pantry. But at Care for Real, they've been accepted for who they are. Not dead named or misgendered, even on days when they've not had the energy to shave or put on their face. Because food, my friends, is a basic human right. It's a basic necessity. No one should be fearful to ask for assistance, and gender identity and expression must never be a barrier. So I give thanks this Pride season that it's much easier for queer kids to be themselves and to explore and to claim their identities. But I also know it's easy to live in our own little rainbow bubble here on the north side. This weekend, this month, it's going to seem like everyone is celebrating us. But friends, we can't become complacent. We must never forget that the first Pride was a riot led by trans women of color.
Yes.
And I, as a white person, must be the one to say that. And until they tell me that we don't need Pride anymore because all of us are fully integrated and accepted and celebrated, until then, Pride must continue to be a protest. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all for bearing with us. Next up, we're going to have Holly Gordon, Milk Can and Honey Bridal. There you are.
I'm very impressed with everyone here. I'm having major imposter syndrome. Thank you for having me. I'm a huge fan. My name is Hallie Borden. I use she, her pronouns. I own Milk Handmade, a sustainable clothing store in Andersonville that features local and independent designers, myself included. I also co-own Honey Bridal, which is now in River West, but used to be in Andersonville. With my sister, we're a bridal shop that features untraditional, ethically made wedding gowns. I'm also on the board of directors of the Andersonville Chamber of Commerce. Years ago, when I came out to my mom as bisexual, she took it a lot harder than I had expected. I knew that she would love and support me no matter what, but her struggle with accepting the fact that I was queer was rooted in the belief that my life would become more difficult if I was publicly out. She kept saying that she didn't want my life to be harder. She didn't want anyone to discriminate against me. She didn't want me to feel unsafe. But since I've come out, I've really found the opposite to be true. My life has improved immensely. I don't feel like life is harder. I feel like life is a lot bigger. My world is full of a sense of community and support that I never knew existed. I feel at peace in my identity, and there's a deeper sense of safety in that. There's obviously very real danger and hate directed at the LGBTQ plus community, from bigoted individuals to bigoted politicians. But there's also so much joy. To me, Pride means embracing that joy, embracing myself, and helping others achieve the same sense of peace and connection that I now feel. Queer kids and their parents spend so much time thinking about the ways that their lives will be harder if they come out. But Pride to me is sharing the many ways their lives will be better. It's showcasing queer love, queer success, queer community, queer role models, queer acceptance, and queer joy. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Next up, we're going to have Lorraine Hayes from T-Pen.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. This is my first time attending, and I've just been so moved listening to everyone share their stories and their experiences, and it's just been amazing. So I'm a senior director at T-Pen. If you don't know who T-Pen is, we've been in the community for almost 40 years. We just celebrated our 37th year of providing services for the LGBTQIA and people living with HIV. So I wrote down a few thoughts about what Pride means to us at T-Pen and how we live it every day that we're here. So we serve people from across the city, from north, south, west. People travel to T-Pen because they know that they will be in a space that's inclusive, that's accepting, that they can put the burden down of being in a world that doesn't fully accept them for who they are. And this has been the case since we opened our doors in 1987. So this time of year is special to us. You know, we celebrate, we go to parades, we have reflections, but then, you know, as I was thinking about what to say before I came in here, I realized that Pride, where we work, or where we exist, is actually 365 days a year. You know, this is not something that we lump into 30 days in June. It's something that we are committed to expressing every day of the year. Because for us at T-Pen and the people I work with and the people that we serve, Pride means giving each other and the people who walk through our door a safe space where they can truly, truly be themselves without fear of judgment or rejection. We know that in our community, being able to celebrate Pride, as someone said earlier, is a privilege, where they feel they must hide themselves to be able to survive, to be accepted, to be loved. And at TPAN, we've made it our #1 commitment since we opened our doors almost 40 years ago, that when we allow people to share their stories in their own voice without fear of judgment, rejection, or feeling like they have to hide themselves, that beautiful outcomes come from that. And that when we let people tell their stories through their own lens without the need to fit in or to please, they become truly free. And freedom, as we know from history, is something that our ancestors fought for and something that we're continuing to fight for, as we've so eloquently heard from so many people today. So we see our role in the community is to be a beacon of light and the possibility of what is to come if we keep up the good fight. We stand in solidarity with those who do not have the privilege to express themselves, to be their full selves just yet, and to celebrate who they are. Our hope is one day that there will not be a need for anyone to come out, because they are already loved and accepted for being simply who they are and not living in fear of judgment. So while we celebrate during June at TPAN and across the city and across the U.S., we can't forget that until we are all free to exist and be our true selves, to experience love as love, none of us are truly free. And we can never forget that, no matter what bubble we live in. And we know all too well that there's still work to do. Thank you.
Trans essentials.
I'm Sarah. I use she, her pronouns, and I own Chicago's queer, women-owned sex shop and gender expression gear store, early to bed, and our website, Trans Essentials. Thank you. And it's hard to go at the end because everybody said it. But whatever, I wrote it down somewhere. I'll say it anyways. First of all, I'm so happy to be here and queer. I love Pride Month. I love rainbows and joyful celebrations. I love my reading glasses. I love our community. To take time to enjoy our fabulousness and to revel in queer love and queer lives. I acknowledge what a privilege it is to live in a time and a place where we can celebrate Pride so openly, and I try not to take that privilege for granted. I don't take for granted the privilege that I have to live in a country and a city that, while far from perfect, allows me to be queer all year. I don't take for granted that we get to stand here in this awesome, cute, gay library with our amazing queer elected representatives and all these amazing people who are taking care of our LGBTQ+ family. But as we are often reminded, have been done so today multiple times, during Pride Month, Stonewall was a riot, Pride is a protest, and while we take time to bask in our glitter, rainbow awesomeness, we cannot ignore the fact that we are living in a time when people's rights are being attacked and taken away on what feels like a daily basis. We need to honor the queer and trans folks who came before us, who fought so hard to advance the cause of LGBTQ+ liberation by continuing to fight, even if we are safe in our bubble. I thought I had that line to myself. We need to fight against the oppressive anti-trans legislation, even if we're not affected by those laws. We need to take care for and protect our queer and trans elders and kiddos, even if they're not our blood. We cannot forget that for all of us who feel safe and supported in our lives and can celebrate Pride openly, there are just as many people, if not more, who are not safe and not supported. We cannot become complacent just because our individual lives may be pretty awesome. Pride, for me, is loving yourself and loving your community when it's not popular. It's standing up to oppressive policies and hateful people, even when it's not directed at you. And more than anything, Pride is taking care of every one of our LGBTQ siblings because we are all of us worthy of love 365 days Thank you.
All right, last but not least, we're going to have State Representative from the 16th District, Kevin Oliver.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Senator Simmons, for inviting me. My name is Kevin Oliver. I am the state representative of the 16th District, representing Skokie, Lincolnwood, and the West Ridge community, also parts of Andersonville. This is my first time at this press conference. I hope I can come again. I heard there's honorary memberships. I'd like to apply. Again, this has been a really incredible experience to hear people's stories and their what pride means to them, and it really just shows that pride is unique to each individual and each individual's experience. As a activist, as a representative, I fight to make Illinois a place where everyone of every sexual orientation and gender identity can live proudly and openly as their authentic selves. It is one of my most sincerely held beliefs that no one should ever be unsafe, unheard, or disempowered because of who they are or who they love. To me, pride means doing whatever it takes to make sure this is true for all LGBTQIA individuals in Illinois. I want to acknowledge that I say these things from a position of privilege as a cisgender man. To me, pride means using that privilege to amplify the voices of LGBTQIA people whose stories often go overlooked. Pride means using my privilege as an elected official to fight for policies that protect the right to same-sex marriage, expand access to affordable PEP and PrEP medications, and help remedy the mental health crisis faced by so many LGBTQIA identifying youth. Pride represents the perseverance of the activists and community leaders who struggled to get us to this moment, but pride is also a reminder of how much we have left to do. As states across the country introduce and pass legislation that openly discriminates against LGBTQIA individuals, I reaffirm my commitment to the LGBTQIA community to continue to make Illinois a state where everyone can thrive and live as their true selves. Illinois will remain an example for the rest of the nation to follow, so long as we all stay engaged in this fight for justice. The work is hard, but that's how we know it's worth doing. And pride means working together to ensure freedom and safety for all. Thank you.
I'm almost speechless. We've come to the end of our program. We're going to do just a brief period of questions, and then I'm going to ask everybody, when we're done with the questions, to come to the front of the room so we can get a group photo, because we're making history, and I want to document this for me to look at when I'm an old man and talk to my grandkids about what we did here. So first, before we have questions, though, I need to say thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I am so blessed to have a phenomenal staff, and they just, I think we all are on the same wavelength about so much what we're trying to do in this office. So thank you to my chief of staff, Heather Sanger. Also my director of outreach and constituent services, Tanuga Connor Bishop, who's our operations assistant. We have two awesome interns. We don't have interns in the 7th District office. We have staff Byron Gooseman from Rogers Park. And Justin Goldberg from Edgewater. My staff is like, sometimes I feel like they're like my brothers, literal siblings. Like we are on the family tree because we have so many of the same values, and it is so, we can pull these kind of events off because we really enjoy working with each other. So we'll take a few questions, and then we'll do the group photo, and then we'll let you all go. So who would like to ask questions? Yeah, Jeremy.
Hey, Senator. Yeah, so we're in a library, obviously, and you talk about, Secretary Janulius had pushed for the bill that it was House Bill 2789 that allows the Secretary of State to deprive libraries of grant funding if they ban books. But you also had legislation that was sort of similar. It didn't really have anything to do with grant funding, but it was related to book bans. What's the status of that? And can you,
of course.
How is it distinct? And
Of course. So thank you for the question. So I introduced and passed SB 689, which would prohibit book banning in classrooms in Illinois, school libraries, and public libraries. The bill passed the Senate. It's moving through the House. We expect that it'll pass in the veto session. My bill is pretty far-reaching. I think the controversial piece of my bill is the part about classrooms. The reason that I'm fighting for this bill is because people are running for school boards and school districts in neighboring states right now, even in Illinois, on the principal objective of banning books. So we have to get ahead of that, and it's going to be a big priority of mine in the veto session. There was also the bill that the Secretary of State just passed that was signed by the governor last week, HB 2789, which I was proud to chief co-sponsor, which would prohibit libraries from banning books that get state grants. So that is a complementary initiative. Both are really important. My legislation is also going to help those libraries that maybe go rogue and decide, well, we don't want your state grants. We have another level of enforcement for that scenario. And of course, you know, the whole don't say gay situation in Florida is really what I'm trying to get ahead of with our classrooms, particularly in more rural, red and purple parts of Illinois, where there are people running for office right now and for school boards on that agenda.
And I've seen this come up too, just among colleagues, just among people who covered the issue. But you know, the book ban legislation covers school and public libraries really. But it's been written about too, about like prison libraries, for example, too, where there's been book bans and, you know, across the state. Like, how does the legislature address that, or can they address that? Has this ever come up among your colleagues?
Yeah, so I'm going to acknowledge my partner, Michael Sullivan, who's right here. He's going to kill me for doing that. I just did that. Michael and I were reading every week last summer about these book bans. We sit in our living room. It's one of the things we like to do on Sunday and just read the news. And it got to a point where I said, all right, I'm tired of reading about this. Let's introduce a bill. So February 9th is where I drafted the first version of my bill that would actually cover prison libraries also, because at first we said all state-funded facilities. So school classroom, school library, public library, even the parochial schools that maybe are not public entities, but they probably get state funds or recognized by the state. So we had to dial that back to get it out of the Senate, part of the legislative process, right? But we will make sure that this bill passes in a form where it is protecting the classrooms, it is protecting those school libraries and those public libraries, particularly those that decide to go rogue and hand back those state grants. So, you know, prison libraries, I was at the Juvenile Detention Center on Wednesday, and I was with young people, including a 15-year-old who was about to potentially be sentenced as an adult, talking about spending the next 50 years in prison. And the thing that struck me on top of that is he talked about how there's just no activities for him. There's no opportunity to read. There's no opportunity to imagine a new future for himself. And so we have to look out for our incarcerated siblings as well. And many of those that are incarcerated come from the LGBTQ community, and they definitely don't get the services that they deserve.
I know a lot of legislation around book banning, what we're seeing in Lincolnwood and a lot of the areas that are in our district, that they're technically reshelving, but it's just like a nuance, but it's also really important because a lot of legislation is targeting book banning, which is not what they're actually doing. They're reshelving books, they're putting them behind lock and key, they're moving them around to make them less accessible, where you have to actually go ask somebody, a staff person, to access these books. And so it's just a gap in some of the work that we're seeing.
Yeah, so we need to look at that also. Any other questions? Yes, you?
I have a question for Representative Olico. Can you talk a little bit about that suit that's been filed, the defamation suit?
No, I'll comment on that.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. We'll just ask you to come to the front of the room so we can get this group photo, and we'll send you on your way. Thank you.